Pausing recording. Where is the pause button? There it is. Pause. Say it again.
Call to order the Technical Subcommittee meeting of Olivos Community Services District for March 11, 2025. Can we have roll call?
I got 8:30 just for the record. Chair Fayram.
Here.
Director Parks.
Here. We have public comments. Member of the public may address the subcommittee on items of interest in jurisdiction. We have nobody here in attendance. Is there anybody online?
Nobody requesting to speak.
Okay. Close the public meeting. We will move on to administrative item. Administrative item, there's consent agenda as the minutes for February 14th. Any comments? Any motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from February 14th, 2025.
Second, all approved? Say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries 2-0. Now, into the business items, Mr. Savage, what's our timing on this?
Yeah, so Stantec folks, so unfortunately I sent out an invite for 9 o'clock and the agenda said 8:30. We're all used to 8:30 in trading emails with Stantec this morning. They're going to get here as soon as they can. So since we posted 8:30, I thought maybe we could go through the rest of the agenda, and once they're both here, we can come back to item 5 if that's all right.
Okay. We can certainly do that, and if we end, we could just take a break and maybe look through items again. So we'll come back to item 5. So item number 6 is general discussion of collection, treatment, and disposal options. Mr. Savage, anything of note here?
Yes. So I guess I'd just say that, while this is certainly, we've got some things that are coming together, right? We certainly have the technical bits related to the City of Solvang connection. I have posted with tomorrow night's agenda, and we will be talking about it at tomorrow night's agenda, kind of a spreadsheet of costs related to local versus City of Solvang. And included in that spreadsheet are some of the numbers we'll talk about with Stantec and later this morning. But interestingly, I think part of the conversation with Stantec is going to be, some of the components in what they're giving us costs on are there regardless, right? And they would agree with that. And so while you see a number related to this particular one that we're going to be talking about later, some of that's redundant, repetitive, also included in other engineering things. So when you see the $9 million number, don't just assume that's what it costs to get to the City of Solvang. However, for argument's sake, because I still don't have a number for the City of Solvang, or from the City of Solvang yet, okay, that number's as good as any, right? So I plugged it into that spreadsheet as the full fare, even though it would probably come down a little bit.
As a full fare for gravity.
Full fare for getting to the City of Solvang.
For the connection to Solvang.
So let me back up and say that again.
Pump stations, we don't, we're just saying it's whatever. Yeah,
so the Stantec get to Solvang number is 9 million, right? 4 of that, let's just say, happens regardless of where we send our waste, even if it stays in the district.
Correct.
And so the real number is more like 5, right? But for the purposes of that spreadsheet, I just put 9 in. And you can see my notes in there because I don't have a number from the City of Solvang yet for what's our connection fee to them. I also plugged in that thing part of another number that they've kicked around. I've heard 2 numbers from them. One is $8,000 per home and another is $15,000 per home. I went with a higher number and said $15,000 per home. All of this just to say, I really encourage you and whoever is watching this or listening in to spend some time with that thing. I'm going to walk through it tomorrow night, but we are getting closer to a number that says, here's what it would be local, and here's what it will be if we send things to Solvang. On the Solvang piece, just for clarity, I don't have a number, as I've said, for the buy-in, whatever you want, capacity charge, but the city, I did speak with the city, and they're ready. In fact, they're supposed to be working with their consultant that did their rate charges to give us a number.
Well,
So I'll get a number from them, so we won't have to guess, is my point. And I
we'll
hope we have
want
that
to review
right.
that and look at that, because when we talked to them way back when, Solvang in 2018, you know, what we're basically, we're not buying a connection fee per connection for Solvang like we were in the city. We're buying a piece of treatment, and then, that's a bulk rate.
Right,
And then we pay,
Right.
we charge connection fees.
Right.
Okay.
right.
So,
I'm just trying to come up with a way to calculate
Yeah.
it for now.
yeah, for now, so, but that all is a good point coming to when we get to these numbers. I mean, it's good information, but I don't know when or how we'll ever get to a real, like, what you wanna do is, you know, if you're gonna buy a car, like, I was just helping my daughter buy a car, you go online and say, oh, Ford in Fremont, California's got a car like that, and their price is this, and then you go somewhere else and their price is that, and that's the number, that is the number.
Yeah,
These aren't the number, they're a number,
yeah,
and they're the best we got, but
Right.
they're not, and so we're just gonna have to keep that, you know, in mind as well, which is difficult, because I don't know that we'll ever get, you know, if we really wanna know what the cost is to do this and what the cost is to do that, we're never gonna get perfectly there
Yeah.
until we get it.
till we get there, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
And then to your point, Director Parks, one of the other things I did in that spreadsheet when I was comparing effluent versus gravity fed going to Solvang, and this is one of the reasons I was hoping to speak to Tristan, is I don't have, you know, we've said effluent is a little cheaper. I don't have what's a little? I don't have a number for little. So I think I used 75%. I said, okay, effluent is, if we do effluent to Solvang, it's 75% of what gravity is. And I remember hearing that from somebody that it was in that range, but I don't remember if it was 75 or 80. It was kind of in that range. Yeah, it'd be a little cheaper because you don't have to worry about pushing solids as much, but you still have pipes, you still have the cleanouts, you still have pumps, you still have all the everything. It doesn't eliminate pieces. It might downsize the pump side, you know, but the pump is still there. And so maintenance is still maintenance, and often with those things, as those of us who've done this sort of stuff, it's really about the people cost, not about the equipment cost, right? It's like, oh yeah, we need a new pump, it's $1,000, but it's $2,000 to have it installed or whatever, right? So I use 75%. If somebody else has a better number, okay, we can plug it in. That's the beauty of a spreadsheet, right? Plug, oh, well, it's 60%, okay, 60 done, and everything recalculates.
Right.
What I
but
really,
even those numbers, I mean, this
Yeah.
is the problem we have, but
yeah,
like the numbers for the install on every individual house, you throw a number at it, but I was just walking up here, I think I saw here on this property, I think their tank is
Yep.
right.
Their lids are up there, yep.
Right out there,
Mhm.
under the grass.
Mhm.
And come in and put an effluent tank and whatnot, you dig up the grass and you run the connection out to the street, and that probably would be about as easy as you get right there.
Yeah, there's nothing between them and the street.
And then other individual 2-bedroom, 1-bath house might be 3 times the cost of what the install would be right here because of going in the backyard and how you get out and disruption of
So
landscape.
in that case, although Regen's estimates included some estimate for per house, you may recall I mentioned very, very briefly at the last meeting. There's been some discussion, and you know, this is one of the things that Director Nelson, and I could say this because we're in open forum, has been really kind of keen to understand and so on. And so one of the things I did is, as opposed to trying to throw a number at what it costs, I just tried to back that out and said, you know what, if we go with effluent, the district will provide the tank, so we have some consistency in tank and equipment. But the reality is, it's probably easier to just let the owner take care of installation. You know, we'll have a contract for installers, but let them take care of that, because then if they got to get around their ornamental plum or around Fifi who's been buried there, or, you know, this one's easy, that one's hard, just back out of that and say, here, you know, owner, we'll give you an effluent tank, we'll get a contractor, but you're going to pay those costs because you want to get around Fifi and your ornamental plum.
Well, and keep in mind too, we're not getting the tank, it's part of.
Well, yeah, it's part of the cost, but I mean, the point is we'll have one tank
We'll
that's
have
consistent
we'll have a supplier with a bulk rate
and knows how to install them and help them, but the point is all those extraneous other costs, because how do you do it, right? It's like, okay, do we just give everybody $5,000? And say, okay, if you're over $5,000, you gotta pay for the rest. It's easier probably just to say, yeah, we'll hire the contractor, get a bulk hourly rate for you, but what it actually costs to do your house, you don't wanna pay for Greg's house and my house if we have hard ones and yours is easy, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right, you can save money by, if you want to do some of the labor yourself, okay, I can take down the deck, I can take down the fence and all that, and not have to get someone else to do it.
You can make those choices. The other thing is, as we said, when a homeowner has it installed themselves, they don't have to pay prevailing wages. In a district, for taking down a fence, you're paying prevailing wages.
and digging a trench.
And
all
digging
that
a trench and
yeah.
everything else,
Yeah.
you're paying prevailing wages. And that's where, and I know we still have to make this decision, but to me, it's crystal clear that any effluent tank option should be totally owned by the homeowner because it will save them money. And really, when you look at equity across the district, I don't want to pay for Greg's install if he's got
Beefy and
Italian marble patio and whatnot, and that's where his tank is.
Yeah.
It's not something that everybody else in the district should pay for, so.
Well, that's reasonable too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's reasonable to ordinary people, like, okay, yeah, why should that happen?
Yeah. So again-
okay, so here we go, I mean,
Yeah.
you can make it as easy as.
Exactly. So the district would provide the tank, right? So we could do the bulk purchase of them based on house sizes. And at the back end of the process, certify. We'd have somebody come by and say, yes, you're correctly connected. You've done everything you need to do, whether you did it yourself, hired somebody, used the contractor that we've,
Before you bury that, someone has to come in.
Yep,
and
just like any other construction project, right? If you want to add a hot tub and you want to put an electrical line across your yard to the hot tub, the county comes out and says, yep, it's 3 feet deep. I think it's 3 feet deep for electrical. You've buried it deep enough, go ahead and bury that trench now. So we would do that sort of stuff because we want to make sure, right? To do it that way. So point is, we provide a tank, we provide the certification, but the work is on the homeowner. It just makes sense. So, yeah, so to that one, all of that is in there back to where I started. All of that is kind of talked about. You might have to look at the comments in the spreadsheet. And then the other thing that I think is really helpful is I drove it down to, okay, what's a bill look like? Right? And I made some real assumptions in there. And I tried to highlight them with the notes everywhere I could. But it gets you down to, okay, if those costs are accurate, to the point, Director Fairham, unlikely that they're 100% accurate. In fact, the chance they are so minuscule, I don't want to talk about it, but they're an estimate, right? And you can then drive down to, okay, what's your monthly annual cost for things? And I tried to get everything to an annual cost because, you've got annual cost for, I'll call it the capital side, the construction side, and then you've got annual cost for the ongoing O&M, right? And I tried to parse it out in such a way that even somebody like me can go, oh, so it's $9,000 a year, or $6,000 a year, or it's $10,000 a year. So but I'll be talking about that tomorrow night, just because it's a part of that conversation about decision matrix. But I would really encourage the public and the two of you to spend some time with that.
But that was also assuming it is split equally amongst the 400 users.
Thank you for saying that.
So,
yes,
I mean,
that's completely inaccurate as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it's spreading the pie.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, we all have equal pieces, but we know that Maggie doesn't have an equal piece, the school doesn't have an equal piece.
Right.
Businesses
To
downtown
us.
don't have an equal piece.
Yeah, exactly. That's
So-
one of the huge assumptions in there.
Right.
All 372 are treated the same.
So,
yeah.
so businesses will be more, residences will be less.
Correct.
What percentage and the necessity of it?
Well, I posted in the spreadsheet some kind of comparable costs within the city of Solvang, for instance, for O&M, or Sandy-Nets, I use Sandy-Nets numbers.
Businesses,
Businesses, schools, residential.
restaurants.
Residentials with this, a wine bar, that sort of stuff. Just so people can say, oh, okay, from an O&M perspective, a wine bar with a restaurant is X times a residence. And I did rely on, in there, you dig through it, I relied on what Sandy CSD pays, because their kind of like what we will be, right? A collection system. They have a little more pipe than we're going to have.
Mhm.
But still, you know, they're X above what the City of Solvang residents pays, and that's because they have their own pipes, right? And they have to manage those pipes. So I tried to leverage those numbers to just say, okay, well, this is what it would be for us. So it's hopefully coming together. It's not done. Let me be real clear about that. It's not done,
At least there's some
but we're driving
generalities
towards
to it, though.
Say again?
There's at least some generalities to it, you kind of see trends that go through it. Because
Correct.
this and so that.
Correct. So again, I encourage public and the board to take some time, look at that. If somebody has questions ahead of time, I'm happy to sit down with anybody, walk it through, just to make sure that people understand what's going on there. And again, the City of Solvang is going to work with their rate consultant to help us understand. I gave them they've got our flow numbers. To your point earlier, I said, it's this amount of flow. It's not 372 connections.
Yeah.
It's this flow. And I told them that, you know, we've got a fairly conservative peaking factor in there because they're going to look at max flow, right?
Yeah.
Wet weather, wet max flow, and I said we've got a fairly conservative number in that. So just know that, you know, it kind of is what it is, right? It might be in the lower number, another number that we're going to make some assumptions around.
When you're saying it's a conservative peaking factor, you're saying it's overestimated? Or,
I'm saying it's conservative. So, yeah, it could be too big of a peaking factor, which means that we won't actually send as much during wet weather.
because it's a pretty large, it's 4 times, right? It's a year,
It's-
something like that?
I think originally it was 2.3 or 2.6 or 3.2. I forget
Yeah,
the number.
I
It was
think
3.6.
2.5 or 6 I thought was what it was. but
Maybe
Maybe
that's
that's what
expensive, is it at 4 on thing?
Hold on. No, I'll just bring it up. I can do this because we've got time anyway. Make sure I can share my screen. Hold on just a second. Since they're not here yet.
That's not something you want to get wrong.
Yeah, you don't want to get wrong, you know.
You don't wanna
it's
underestimate
good.
it all of a sudden.
Yeah, you don't want to underestimate,
Where does this all go?
but you don't want to pay for being way out
Right.
either, so,
So
you know,
here,
in a lot of this.
3.2 is the answer.
3.2?
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of this, we talked about, you know, well, in infiltration and whatnot, and you know, our system's gonna be, much different than most other systems. We won't have 100-year-old clay pipes.
Yep.
We will have
Brand
bell and gasket sealed pipes in the case of effluent, for gravity in the case of effluent, sealed HDPE that's watertight, so,
So ionizing gonna be less of an issue.
yeah, we need to, yeah.
So here's where this all comes into play, right? This is the spreadsheet up here. So if let me make this bigger. So everybody can see it. So if, you know, here's our existing flows, here's our 20-year build out, right? Our existing flows are less than 100,000 gallons. Yeah, apply this 3.2 peaking factor and it goes up to 308, right?
Yeah.
If you lower this number, I gotta get into that cell, you know, to 2.5, let's say. Oh, look, now you're down to 250
Right.
versus. So that's why I said we've used a fairly conservative number that it's engineer's best estimate on things. Will it be 3.2? Probably not, right? Probably be lower.
I wonder if there's some analysis that can be done, certainly on the existing, to see what, we'll have an average daily water use supplied by.
Yeah, we did that backward. That's how they came to this number.
Okay,
Yeah, they said, what's the community's inflow? Because that equals outflow, right? Plus.
although
And so.
although you've got irrigation in there too, so,
Yep.
you know, when I was thinking, like, there could be some spot checks, like on some of the commercial that have basically no landscaping.
Right.
I mean, even the Grand Hotel.
Not a ton.
Yeah, and they got some grass there, but very minimal. They got several rooms in a restaurant, and you've got wine merchant and Jetica's and whatever else, and look at what the difference is there. You know, I think it comes down to, this isn't final. When we really get, and we're at 30% on all of our drawings, and when we finally get to a decision on what we're gonna do, that's when we have to start like really nailing these numbers down, because Now, it's gonna cost us on the backside, we don't wanna be low. We need to be right.
Yep.
We just need to be right.
If it's 2.6, it's 255.
Yeah.
That's a half lower, right, than what it was.
Right.
And you can play with this number all day long, right? Well, what if it's only 2?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
So anyhow,
And then are we paying Solvang for,
so we would pay for this, way over.
actually, is there like a meter that we pay for the flow that goes through, so we actually?
So I think what we would,
produce?
what we would do is we have to buy the capacity, which means we have to be able to treat that number. There'll be a meter that we will actually pay for what we treat.
I'm not sure of that.
You're not sure of
I
that?
don't think so, because that's not the way San Ynez does it.
Oh, okay, well, then I wanna look at that because I don't wanna pay for 3.2, whether we use it or not. That's how San Ynez is set up?
San
Are you
Ynez
sure?
owns 20% of the capacity
But,
of the plant. So
okay, so you pay for that, but for the actual treatment, are they not metered?
I don't believe they are.
So this is 20%, this is what our operating costs are, here's your 20%?
Yep.
I think that's something we need to talk to them about because,
So I've thought through this some,
yeah,
not completely, but let's just take a step back for a second. Okay, so let's say you say we're 20% of the capacity. Let's use San Ynez numbers, right? If you say we're 20% of the capacity, then the numbers are easy, right? When it comes to O&M, they just say, here's your 20%, you pay, right? If you go to, here's what we're using, right? And you're not paying for a capacity like 300,000 gallons over time, when they upgrade the plant, what happens? Do you now have 300,000 gallons of a 2 million gallon a day plant? Or do you still just have 300,000 gallons, which was 20%, but now is 15%?
if I understand what you were saying through that scenario, if they increase the capacity of the plant, I would suggest that, maybe they're gonna annex a bunch of land. That could happen in 20 years,
They changed the use of the golf course?
We don't want 20% of that,
Correct.
yeah.
That's where metering gets kind of interesting.
Yeah, but I still think, maybe you understood what I said, or maybe I'll say
I
it
did,
again. Is
yeah.
that when you buy the capacity,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't use it all.
Mm-hmm.
So you buy I'm trying to think of a good analogy.
Yeah, so it's like this.
But you actually pay for what they treat. And if they're saying that we're gonna pay for what they could treat, whether they treat it or not, I think we have some negotiation there, because I don't know.
It's kind of these two numbers, right? We're talking about the amount you purchased, and I'll just use 300,000 because it's an easy round number, right? Is that 3 million?
That's the potential.
Let me throw commas in here, it makes it easier. So, yeah, not 3 million, 300,000, right? And so if what you're saying is, if instead, on a regular basis, you're only using 100,000, right? You would only pay for 100,000, the processing of 100,000.
The processing.
Correct.
Not the capital cost and the plant, potential, you paid for that, you have to pay for that.
Mhm.
But,
So where this gets kind of interesting, I think, is, so I'll just do it this way. So I'm not sure this will come out because I'm doing this on the fly, but let's just, for argument's sake, say this is the same for us in San Ynez, right? And so with that, 600, so that means that Solvang has responsibility for this, right? Let's say they're 400,000. Okay, I didn't my formatting go down. Well, I want to make sure we're saying the same thing, Tom. I'm trying to I think I can drive this home this way. So, because this is 1.5, right? So that's the entire plant.
Mhm.
So they have rights, right, to that amount, okay? And here's just made up numbers,
Yeah.
completely made up numbers. So when it comes time to break up the O&M, right? Well, the total O&M is only based off of 600,000, right? It's not based off of 1.5 million. even though they have that capacity.
Right.
Right? So if for some reason we're only using 50,000, well, maybe that's the way to do it. I think this could come up again. So it's really what's your percentage, oops, sorry. This number, right? Why didn't it come up? It's a percentage, that's why. So, sorry, I'll get there. Takes a second. Let's make sure we're saying the same thing. So here's what we're saying, right? So you're saying, well, your treatment capacity that's calculated at 17%. But if you come along and you say, no, we only use 50,000 gallons, well, it dropped down. Why didn't that work? Get this up, put it in there as a number. Hold on, sorry.
And everybody else is gonna go.
Correct, right? Because of capacity, but yeah. So that's what you're saying. Yeah,
I think
yeah,
we need to talk this through, and this probably isn't,
yeah.
but.
Yeah, well, it's part of the technical
Yeah,
system.
You
Yeah,
know,
good point.
Sandy has
Yeah.
metered.
Well, I'll ask Sandy knows if they're metered. That's the bottom line. I'll ask Sandy.
If they're metered and we would be metered, then everybody would know what.
Yeah,
percentage is being-
I would think they
being
have to be
used.
metered, otherwise how would Solvang even know what they're sending? They could send whatever, and they wouldn't even know. I bet, find out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's, we're closing in on 9 o'clock, so.
Still don't have our folks.
Okay. Why don't we move on to, item 7, with the subcommittee member comments. Director Parks, do you have anything?
Not in addition to what we've been discussing. right?
Yeah, okay. I don't know if I did anything really, well, we'll call it good then.
You didn't open for public comment on item 6 before you move on to subcommittee comments.
Okay, I'm sorry, go back, any public comments on item 6? Nobody in the room? Anybody?
None online. Okay.
Okay.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah,
Checking the boxes.
thank you for that. Item 7 are informational, so,
So there were no public comment, or no subcommittee member comments.
no comments.
And Stantec's just gonna.
They should pop on any second.
On their new, the latest update.
They should be here. I'm surprised they're not. Let's see if there's a note. Oh, they're on a Google Meet. Nope, look at the agenda. We're not on a Google Meet. Didn't know there was a Google Meet link in the invite that I sent. I'll get here in a second. Now that
Doug thought it was 9 o'clock.
Doug thought it was 9 o'clock. That's okay. The conversation that he's here for, he's here at 9 o'clock. Good morning.
Good morning.
Grab a chair.
Just hoping to see Tom in shorts and on a knee bike.
Where was I grossly criticized for wearing shorts because it was about 38 degrees out, and I was walking around with shorts. That criticism was quite justly levied. I was wondering what I was doing. You know, I own a number of athletic sweats, long span sweats that I could easily change into, but,
Well, I'm envious because that will look at the time.
yes. I like to send pictures every once in a while to my cousin back in the Midwest. We're on a February day on shorts, and they're out shoveling snow. Should we just stand down for a minute, Mr. Savage, or should we adjourn for a minute, or what would be?
I would just wait, you know,
Okay.
you can call a 5-minute recess if you want.
Let's just call a 5-minute recess.
We'll call Carrie real quick, just to make sure that. Either saw my text or. Good morning, it's Guy. Oh, well, I can send it to you both real quick, or it's on our website either way, but I'll send it. No, no problem. All right, bye. Struggle bus this morning, I'll tell you what. Doug.
And
Ah, there you go.
these some first steps. Only thing I ever thought to work.
Good morning, Guy.
Good morning. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I just was using the Google Meet.
Yeah, it's, this is, you know, we don't have all those tools available to us, just what I have on my laptop, and I accidentally included that, my fault.
No worries. Hopefully you were able to do your other parts of the agenda.
We certainly did, and we just ended when I sent you that note, so yeah.
Okay.
Other than maybe wasting some of Johnny's time, we took advantage of the time we had.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Whenever you're ready, we can.
Okay, we'll reconvene
9:04.
904 Technical Subcommittee, and we will go back to item 5, discussion regarding possible Olivos Community Services District connection to the City of Solvang, and we have Stantec staff, and we have the 30% submittal what we're going to talk about.
Can I provide a brief introduction?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
So 2 or 3 things related to this. So first thing is, for those in the room and those online, this is not agendized for tomorrow's meeting. We do expect to have it agendized in April for the full board to have a full discussion on it. The timing was such that I didn't want to try and jam this on to tomorrow night's agenda in case there were some tweaks that we wanted made or some additional conversation that we needed. Also, I've traded an email with Ms. Poitras, and we talked about it briefly a few minutes ago. There are some components in this design that are, I don't want to call them redundant, but they're part of a design, whether we build something in the district or very nearby the district, for instance, pump stations and some of those things that we would have to have anyway. So when you look at the total cost, keep in mind that some portion of that, and I'm sure they'll talk about it, but some portion of it actually isn't only related to going to solving. It happens regardless. So there's those two, and then again, thank you, the two of you. So if you could maybe walk through things at a high level and tell us what you've got, that would be great. Good to see you both again.
Sure, I'll start off and then Johnny will take over some of the more details. So like guys said, there's two lift stations, one on the Grand Avenue side and one on the Santa Barbara Avenue side. And they are both needed to be able to pump the wastewater to wherever it's treated. The Grand Avenue pump station is the smaller lift station. It's needed and was added after the 30% design for the community in order to reduce the depth of the pipe that's underneath the creek and reduce the depth of and how deep it would need to be for the Santa Barbara lift station. So the Grand Avenue lift station is a lot smaller. It is proposed within the right of way. We did take a look at the property line information, and where we're putting it is still within the right of way and away from that monitoring well. And then the Santa Barbara lift station is your primary larger lift station. It has a second capacity, a second wet well capacity, just to add a little bit more time available. And it is a deeper wet well, and we added basically a drive-through area. There's fencing along it. We pushed it back away from the road a little bit. So part of it is in the right-of-way and part of it is in that private property. We have a generator building, so you'd have a permanent location for a generator. We had talked about having the generator mounted on a trailer. But we set it up so that this generator and the size of it and whatnot would be able to support both lift stations. So the lift station also has a valve vault, and it's a duplex pump station. So that means there's two pumps, and it's pumping into one single force main. So one of our questions also for this committee is to ask whether or not you actually want to have two force mains. That was one of the things that we started thinking about. It's a very long distance from this pump station to wherever you're going to treat your wastewater. But for this one, the force main all the way down to the Solvang connection point. Right now, there's one force main, and has valves at a certain distance in order to be able to turn off and isolate sections of the pipe if something needs to be fixed. And you do have extra storage capacity, but the concern that we've noticed from some other communities is that 50 years down the road, they've needed to do a much bigger replacement of pipe segments, and having only one single force main has caused some problems for them. So they've actually been installing dual force mains, use one at a time, and then switch over every couple months. So that might be something to consider for final design. It does add a little bit of cost, but basically the two force mains could be in the same trench. So that's something to consider. And Johnny, do you want to kind of talk over a little bit more about some of the details of the lift station before we move on to the pipeline alignment?
I was trying to unmute there. No, I think you covered most of the parts, Carrie. So did you, sorry, and I don't know if I caught it, that this lift station, regardless, what we're looking at on my screen is the Santa Barbara lift station located at the corner of Alameda and Santa Barbara, is basically required regardless if we send wastewater to Solvang or not, because it's the kind of the end point of the system. And if we have a centralized treatment somewhere else, this will need to send it there, and obviously we can
Right.
size the pumps to do that. But
Do you want to flip over to the Grand
yeah,
Avenue lift
we
station?
can go to the other one. It's quite a bit smaller, the footprint of it. And in this basically will have really no holdover. As soon as it fills up to a level set point, it's going to send water to the Santa Barbara lift station. Really, I think Carrie touched on it. The only reason that we're suggesting putting a lift station here is it significantly reduces the depth of the incoming sewer to the Santa Barbara lift station and any of the excavation at the Santa Barbara lift station, because we can, just have this force main 4 feet below the ground, and we can run it along the bridge. Carrie and I did go out to this site here and looked at the bridges, and there looks like there's plenty of space. There's already multiple conduits and multiple utilities that are running through there, and most of them are on the north side, so they're on the upstream side of the bridge, and we would suggest putting the force main on the downstream side of the bridge for more protection. But yeah, in general, did anybody have any questions about like where we're locating anything, or kind of any of the components that are involved? These lift stations are really similar to each other. They're both duplex systems. They pretty much have the same valving, the same vault structure. They're relatively the same size, other than the pumps and the wet wells that are required.
I just had one quick question. So on the cost estimate, the grand lift station, our total is, am I reading $500,000?
Yeah, I think that was sorry, I don't have it up, but I
I'll
think
open
that
it.
was our estimate. And again, these are very rough ballpark estimates. We're kind of lumping costs in there, but we did look at past projects that we've done work on, and gotten, we've gotten quotes from certain contractor suppliers in the past, and basically inflated costs from there.
Right.
Uh,
And a significant cost for both of the lift stations is the site electrical and the new electrical service.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that
Any
process,
coordination with the
yep,
utility company is going to be expensive.
right.
That's what we've noticed on one of our last projects that we worked on, PG&E. It was a fairly pricey process to get. They put a new transformer in,
Right.
And basically a pole mounted overhead service to where we needed it to be. So
So
Okay.
that's what bumped up the cost quite a bit. You can see this, the site electrical, we estimated as 100,000, and new electrical service as another 100,000. So that's more or less like half the cost of that lift station is just the electrical.
Okay. And so then on that, then I just, thinking about this, you're saying that $500,000 for the grand is cheaper than deepening the lift station on Santa Barbara and going under the creek with the pipe, that we're better off with that than the additional cost of going deeper and then going under the creek?
It's fairly comparable, actually. Our concern with making it quite a bit deeper, Johnny, what was the depth that we ended up at the Santa Barbara lift station? If we went it was like
30 feet. Yeah.
35? Yeah,
So if we had a micro tunnel under this for the pipe or something, or if we had a jack
directional
and bore, it
drill.
would be pretty expensive at that depth. I mean, the excavations for those pits would be expensive.
Right.
I can't
And the
remember.
manhole at this side was like 20 feet deep.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty deep just to get below that creek, because we're trying to get below the,
The scour line.
the assumed scour line.
Right.
And we assumed, based on our preliminary design from the 30% collection system, that it was roughly 5 or 10 feet below the creek bed there. And I mean, we'd have to get a certain analysis done just to make sure that we're not going to, end up 10 years from now having the pipe exposed. Yeah. So I couldn't weigh in on the exact cost difference, but it's not going to be that much different. I know we got a past quote on another Santa Barbara project that I was working on for tunneling under a creek, and it was a really short span. It was about 50 feet. And
Comparable.
it was pretty
Yeah.
expensive. Yeah, I think
In the $7,500,000 range, right?
no, it was much more than that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the construction itself was 100 and something, just for that pipe segment. But I mean, if this is something that you guys want us to put a little bit more, information into, so you can see the differences, I think we could do that because we obviously didn't include that in the cost, and I don't think that was included in the collection system
Right.
cost or.
Well, I think in the report, if there could be a little more, support for why, why the two pump station, option is more favorable. And then, I mean, along with that, we should also consider, long-term energy costs and maintenance of it too. So in the total, if it costs more now to go with one lift station and do the hard work now, and in the long run it's cheaper, then I think we should look at that. And I know we're still at the 30% phase,
Right.
but I think that should, some type of comparative statement I think would be helpful, because I mean, if we decide to go to a one lift station project, we still do that. We're not about to dig, we're not about to start. So at this point, I think that would be good information to have and weigh out.
Yeah. The other thing I was considering is, maybe there's a possibility that PG&E would allow, a larger service over at the Santa Barbara Avenue side that could backfeed this lift station, and maybe you can get rid of a new electrical service. That might be a possibility. I don't know if they really like that because of the distance in between the two, but maybe that is a negotiating part to determine as well, and that does factor into the cost.
Yeah, if I could.
Yeah, please.
So, yeah, in the costing, maybe you can somehow help us more clearly in the document say, okay, these are here regardless, and these
Okay.
are here that are unique to Solvang, just so that when I go through my calculations on comparing the two, local versus Solvang, I can more easily say, okay, that's
Okay.
unique to Solvang, this happens regardless.
Right.
Sure.
And both the lift stations we kind of figured would happen regardless. But you're right. Maybe there's the Grand Avenue as proposed in the 30% collection system. We didn't have that. And we were just kind of like thinking of, okay, long-term maintenance, long-term accessibility, and even construction of the Santa Barbara lift station. We felt that having the second lift station would be easier.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, it's definitely easier. Construction wise, it's still not significant. We still have to excavate, but I think it's a good point. And I don't think it's a bad idea to show kind of a life cycle cost of what the operation of this lift station would be compared to just a gravity sewer, because that has a certain life expectancy to it, and we can look at those two things.
Right. But we also need to factor in permitting.
Yeah.
So, because permitting to directionally drill underneath the creek is becoming a little bit more challenging than it was previously.
Okay,
yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Pike had a question.
Just on the electrical, if we have two lift stations, they both will be serviced by a single emergency generator.
Correct.
Okay, so the electrical engineer could look at how to integrate that feed with a permanent power feed as well, because the breaker
Yes.
power supply for the smaller lift station actually can be removed.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a possibility. I've just seen that PG&E doesn't necessarily like to do that because they consider these two different lift stations two different addresses. So they don't like one service serving two different addresses. That's the only problem that I've seen in the past.
An item for negotiation.
Yep.
Correct. Yes.
I just had two other comments maybe overall before you continue on, so I don't forget. First of all is, who is gonna stamp and sign the report again? I know I asked that last
I
time.
am.
Okay.
I will.
And then I did notice, on the plan sheets, there was no profile. Did you have profile sheets?
Correct,
normally-
not for 30%, no.
Okay, we had profile on the 30% gravity
Well,
sewer.
yes, for the overall collection system we did, we needed to do that to understand the depth of the sewer in order to be able to put a cost to it. But because this is a force main system, we didn't necessarily need to be able to do that. And there's very few crossings of the utilities. So, and the fact that it's a force main, that you have a little bit more flexibility with going under utilities, that we felt that it was not necessary. So in our proposal, in our contract, we specifically excluded profiles.
So
Yeah,
what-
I was going to say
let-
there's only one significant crossing. I mean, obviously the bridge crossings are
Right.
significant, but there's only one significant storm drain crossing that is along the alignment. And Carrie and I went out there and took some pictures, and it's, 7 feet deep. So we didn't see any huge conflicts. It's pretty much a straight shot, but yeah,
Is that the
sorry, I
one
didn't mean
down by the park, kind of?
the storm drain by the park.
Is that the
Uh,
one?
there- No, there's actually one. It's coming from someone's private property. I can't remember exactly where it is. It's prior to the first bridge crossing, though.
Like by Blackstone, Black Horse, Black, whatever it is, where the old car is.
It's after baseline. It's somewhere around there.
I want to say the county has another fairly sizable one when they did the realignment of the road.
Yeah. There is a storm drain there. I believe it's on the east side of the road, though. I don't know if it actually crosses our alignment. I'd have to look at the utility map that we have.
I think it does, but I could be wrong too. Well, let me ask this. I think, so then is there did you have like a typical, because, right now, like how deep is the pipe in general? And
So we do have a typical trench detail, and normally we'd run this about 48 inches to kind of clear whatever water and other items we can. And if there's, we can make it deeper if we need to. But yeah, that's probably the normal depth that I would assume we would need to be at. I don't
For
know
a
if
force
Carrie-
main sewer,
Yeah.
I just want to look at what
Can you
sheet
flip to it?
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot that I was sharing my screen here. I think it's probably the last sheet here.
I think it is. Oh, we just say varies.
Well,
Maybe
it
we-
does say
Oh, 48
does say-
inch, yeah.
Yeah, so it should be yeah, the depth of cover will vary just slightly, but normally that's what we would run it at, 48-inch men.
Do you know what page you're on in your document?
It's
16.
16. So the last sheet that's in the document. It's just some standard, typical details that we included just to give some context to this, because obviously having no profile like we all are discussing doesn't really give a lot of context to the pipe. So we'll need some details to kind of rein it in a little bit.
16 of that document, okay.
And then on the alignment, that you have, right in there, are you in the paved roadway for most of the area, on the shoulder for most of the area, a little of both? I mean.
Yeah, so we tried to stay in that eastbound lane, within the shoulder. The county topo that we're using is fairly old, and I don't think it's entirely accurate for what's actually out there, but it does the job. And so we kind of, this alignment's obviously going to have to be, if it's chosen during final design, going to have to be refined a bit. But we tried to stay in that lane as much as possible to avoid any type of,
So it's in the
full
pavement.
road closure in the pavement. Yeah. And there is possibility to bring it out of the pavement. But there are utility poles and there's other utilities that are running in the side there. So things to worry about.
The only other major utility, well, not the only one, because I think there's, is there fiber and gas down there? And then also,
Do you want to zoom into one of the roadway
Yeah.
ones?
Yeah, so here there's, I mean, just from our utility research that we did, there's definitely gas and communications crossing the road. So yeah, fiber
So,
optics.
yeah, gas is on one side and comm and
Yeah,
overhead
so
wire and
we do have gas on the west side with that the water line. That's pretty much the predominant utility on that side the entire stretch. But then yes, the telecom is at every bridge crossing. We noticed that there is telecom that was basically running alongside that side of the bridge.
And ID1 had, excuse me, ID1 has a line going down the whole length.
they do.
Yeah, they have a 16-inch water line that runs the whole length.
That's a
So
significant water line.
So it comes from it crosses near Sunnyfields Park, and then it comes back over into the road here, and then is basically running along along this west side. And it did some interesting things at the bridges that we noticed, or we actually couldn't find the 16-inch water line, but it looked significantly off the side of the road, like they had drilled underneath the creek and installed it. So. Which is good for us because it gets it out of the way. But that would have to be positively located in order to make sure that we're staying away from it. So yeah, we can continue down the alignment, and you guys can ask whatever questions you'd like.
Easy.
So from a general standpoint too, there, like we were saying, there's really no significant utilities that we assumed were going to be in conflict just based on the utility research that we've done so far, and the information that we've gotten back from the utility companies.
So we're staying on the east side of the road for the most part.
Yeah, for pretty much the entire portion.
Do you want to jump to a bridge?
Yeah, there should be a bridge coming up. So we're same thing on this side. We're going past baseline. Yeah, and all the horizontal curves on this road are pretty large, so there's really, any material can work for those, but we have what we're showing is HDPE right now. Let's see. I think we're coming up to a bridge here. I might zoom out just a little bit so I can see both of these. There we are. Yeah, so this is the first bridge crossing, and we're suggesting putting everything on the downstream side of the bridge just for more protection. Just because any debris coming down the creek, then it's going to get hung up on the upstream side. So that's why we're crossing over here. And then, I think this water line is pretty much.
It's pretty far away. Yeah.
Yeah, this is where we saw kind of what I was discussing. It shoots off and goes under the creek. The gas line, no, the gas line was hanging over the creek just with no supports. Do you remember that, Carrie?
Yeah, it was self-supported and it was very awkward.
Far away from the bridge, so we wouldn't need to worry about it.
As it relates to ID1, if I could.
Sure.
They have said, should we pursue this option, they'd like to talk to us about where their lines are, and see if there isn't some way to, because I think the way I interpreted their comments was they'd like to realign some things as it is. And if there's an opportunity to share some costs here, they would certainly be interested in that. So if we choose this solution, I guess is where I'm going, when we get to the 75, 80%, whatever it is, that'll be time to actually directly engage them and make sure that if there's some benefits to both of us, that we'll do some things.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, from what I can tell, their water line goes through quite a bit of private property, so I don't know if there's easements that are involved there somewhere.
I'm sorry, I do have to jump over to another meeting, but Johnny's going to be able to stay on and finish everything. So I apologize, I have to leave so early.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All
Gary.
right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So yeah, roughly, our alignment, we didn't choose, like a straight dimension off the side of the road. It was pretty much what works with the curves and kind of the straight portions of the road. But in general, we're about 6 feet from on the straight portion, 6 feet from the edge of pavement. So still within the lane. We can always move it closer during final design. And it helps that there's no water utilities other than water services that we can probably get a little bit closer to the edge of pavement or possibly go just outside the pavement. We just need to make sure that, these utility poles aren't in the way. And just so I'm aware, is this zoomed in enough for you guys to see? So kind of another straight portion of road. And stop me if anybody has any questions on anything.
Trenching or boring?
Oh, good question.
Yeah, so,
What was it?
yeah,
Are we trenching, or is this assuming trenching or boring? Or
Yeah, this was assuming open cut. So in our memo and actually on these plans, this could be directionally drilled. I mean, directional drill is, there's not really a bad candidate for it, but depending on the equipment that the contractor uses, they could space their bore pits however they need to. But yeah, I think it's a good candidate for a directional bore. But we're basically assuming this is open cut at the moment. That's why we're not showing any bore pits or anything like
yeah, I
that.
think that, at this point, it's a 4-foot trench, which is pretty shallow. But in areas, what I would see on this is that when you actually come to construction, you could give the contractor the latitude to decide, what they.
Exactly.
And there's no harm in going deeper if we decided, say the grade of the pipe is not as critical. It is critical in certain areas, obviously.
Yeah.
How we would do that, but there could be an alternative for boring, which might be less disruption, which might be better, although I would envision this would be, they'd only have a portion open at a time, they wouldn't cut the whole road and then, they would just go like a train,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, on a past project, we've basically had the contractors an option for them to bid with horizontal drilling or open cut, and they went with horizontal drilling, and that's what was chosen by one of the City of Santa Barbara projects that I worked on. So it's I mean, it's not invasive compared to open trench, so they can plate that pit or backfill sooner than they can backfill the entire trench. So definitely an option. Any other questions while I'm here? Keep moving on. So this is the next bridge. And yeah, kind of the same setup. We're just roping into the downstream side, and this bridge is really similar to the other one. Looks like there's plenty of space. This actually had already some pipe hangers down at the bottom that were just, there was only one conduit that was on them, but there was other space that was open. So the only thing I know there's a stream gauge that we took a picture. That's right here. That would have to be coordinated with the flood control, and just to make sure that they know that we're putting a force main near it. But
yeah, I think that's a USGS. I don't think it controls, but
okay. Yeah, whoever's the jurisdiction on that thing. So, but yeah.
So that's the one by the apple farm then, right? That's that bridge, yeah. So I think you could probably just jump to the termination of the.
Yeah, the end. I mean, it's more of the same.
Yeah.
And then, once we get into Solvang, the City of Solvang, we're close to Sunnyfields Park here. And, one of the things that we are not showing on here that we still need to reach out to the city because they didn't give us the information, was they said there was a pressurized sewer that was coming from Sunnyfields Park, but they didn't have any plans for it, and they didn't know the location. But they knew it tied into the manhole somewhere, and so I mean it's kind of just open-ended right now. But I think it would be pretty pertinent to get that information shown on this plan, so during final design they'd be aware that there's another pressurized sewer here that's tying into this manhole.
Yeah, and so just to say that again, we did reach out to the city, we had traded some emails with them, and they just couldn't find any designs on it. So it's not work that Stantec didn't try and do. They tried to do it, but I just want to be clear because that could have
Yeah,
left it.
I wanted to bring it up.
Would they not come in at a manhole? You could probably just pop some manholes and probably find it.
Yeah, well, that's what they said,
Yeah.
and that's what I think Johnny's saying is, you know, when we get to 70-80%, we gotta track that one down,
Yeah.
but for the purposes of this, I think it's sufficient. Right, Johnny, is
Yeah,
that fair?
yeah, and I mean, honestly, at this point, I think that it would be good to have some sort of like, you know, verbal location, or if they could share that, and we can just show it on these plans, just so it's something that, you know, the designer during the final phase is aware that they need to show this. They need to pop that manhole and figure out what the invert is, and yeah, because we did not pop any manholes while Carrie and I were doing the site walk.
Sure, fair. I'll follow up with
Okay.
with the city.
One other question on the process. Okay, back then
So
on the,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
if I could flip to the cost estimate really quick then,
Sure.
you know, on all the items then, you know, we've got the 6-inch HDPE line, and then the mobilization demob, that's for the entire work, right? That's the
Yeah.
lift, not specific to the pipeline, correct?
Yeah, we basically lumped everything together in that. I mean, they're going to have to mob and demob for this entire length, and it's pretty significant. I think it's about 3.5 miles. So that's a kind of a typical cost that we've seen on other projects that are, you know, multiple locations of utility trenching and things like that. So
And then moving down the line, at this point, a 6-inch pipe for our design is perfectly logical. As we get closer to the end and refine numbers, is there a possibility to go to a 4-inch line?
there's definitely a possibility. So when I was looking, because I did all the hydraulic calcs for this, so when we downsized to a 4-inch at the flow rates that we're trying to push through here, the head loss significantly increases. And so the 6-inch range kind of got us in that sweet spot. So where it's like, okay, we can use a pumping system kind of off the shelf. Because otherwise we'd probably have to up the horsepower of the pump in order to push it through. And then if there's any kind of a, you know, emergency where both pumps need to run, a 4-inch we'd be screaming down, you know, screaming the flow down to this manhole. So it is possible, and we can always refine those when we do final design. But that's how we dialed this in, was based on velocities and the head loss in order to make the pump curve work.
Understand.
Mhm. Though it should be noted, we chose in our memo to go with a VFD because there's, you know, this is a downhill system, pretty much. So it's like gravity flow, unless we're overtaking the gravity flow with friction losses. But a 6-inch kind of gets us right in that range where it's provide a little bit of head, but almost not enough head. And then a 4-inch would significantly increase that, where we have to pick a different pumping system.
Right, yeah. And then your pipe pressures are a lot higher. Right?
Yeah, in order to get it. Yeah, and I mean, I think what we had shown on here was DR21. So it's you know, not super thick walled HDPE, because we didn't need significant pressure to get it down to here. But yeah, if we had to neck down in size, then we would have to increase the thickness of the pipe to accommodate that pressure.
All right, maybe I'll just stop here for a minute and ask if there's any public comment. We don't have any member of the public in the room. Is there anybody online?
Nobody there to ask questions.
We'll close the public hearing here. We'll bring it back. Any final questions or comments?
Well, if an effluent collection system were chosen, we would eliminate the Grand Avenue lift station, correct?
Yeah, so that's really dependent on because it's a gravity system. But if we had, pressurized effluent systems that were feeding, yeah, there's potential that we could just feed into a pressurized line that continues across the bridge. I mean that would save you a whole lift station in my mind, but we'd have to look at the hydraulics just to make sure it would work. Um, but I, but yeah, it's all going down Grand is it's all downhill, so it's not like we're pushing against head that we need to acquire. So it the only place that we would need kind of a hill climb is across the bridge because I think it's just slightly lower on the Grand side, but it's really not significant. Um, yeah, unfortunately, that wasn't one of the things that we looked at during our collection system 30%, but I think another firm did. But yeah, it's definitely a possibility.
I think to follow up on your comment too, on one of our hybrid options we were looking at was effluent on the west side of the creek and gravity on this side, and likewise, an effluent could just go to Grand,
Right, whether it's on the Grand
Yeah,
Avenue side
or
or
the
the
other,
station was
the
on either
lift
side.
station, you'd
only
eliminate,
need one
you'd
because you
eliminate the lift station.
push the effluent while using it. And still, a 6-inch force main would be ideal for an effluent system as well, you think? Or would it be more of a chance to go into a 4-inch?
So it depends on where we're sending it from. So if we're collecting from the Grand side, I think that when I was looking at the actual, the peak wet weather flows that are going to be here, and we'd have to reestablish that. Like obviously we didn't do the calcs for effluent sewers because you significantly cut down on the I&I. So I think the flows are lower. So we had proposed a 4-inch coming from the Grand lift station. So I don't see why a 4-inch, pressurized effluent system, like why it would need to be any bigger than that.
Well, I'm still, I'm critically thinking about our I&I assumptions on a new system with bell and gasket, PVC line. And while effluent is a pressure system, which obviously it's instead of I&I, it would be L&L, right? or O&O. But a well-built, designed gravity line, I want to know more why we would consider I&I to be so high.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're correct. If we assume that, a brand new system, the construction is perfect, then obviously there's not going to be any I&I until things fatigue, and it's unlikely. But I think as far as the 30% conceptual collection system plans and the loading study that was done, I think it was more of a risk going down the line. So not looking at like a brand new system, but looking at a system that's been online for a long time. So I wouldn't know exactly how to figure that in. If there's like a certain percentage of the I&I that we've calculated that we could attribute at this time, or like what the risk would be. But I think it's pretty conservative to assume that full I&I based on the standard calculations is going into the new sewer.
I question that. I understand
Yeah.
but I question that.
Yeah, and again, I think that can be refined a little bit during final design, because I&I is not the same across the board. It really depends on where you live and what the hydrology is like. So different jurisdictions have different ways to calculate it. And I think during the loading study, the City of Solvang's peak wet weather factors in the city of, or that, San Ynez, they were kind of did like a hybrid of that to come up with, what we would expect.
Both those systems, I'm not sure what San Ynez collection system is, but Solvang has some old stuff in there that would.
Yeah, theirs was pretty high. I remember their peaking factor was almost 5 for their wet weather flows, which is it's pretty high compared to other jurisdictions that I've seen. And San Ynez was lower. But I think ours is lower than Solvang's as well. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a good discussion to have, though.
Well, yeah, we don't want to be wrong either way.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want to be under. Don't want to be over by too much.
Mr. Pike had a question?
Well, just want to know if the committee is interested in at least a narrative paragraph or two on this concept. We introduced the pros and cons of an amendment 6-inch pipeline for operational maintenance purposes, not for capacity, but so that you could alternate, or you could have one in operation and others being repaired.
I think I'm not in favor of that at this point. I want to understand that more. I don't know what other jurisdictions have done. I don't, San Ynez doesn't have a parallel line, and they've been running since the 70s or whatnot. So I think at this point, no. I don't feel we need that at this point.
Yeah, we so Carrie and I are currently working on a project for Montecito Sanitary District, and they're basically putting in dual force mains at one of their lift stations, and it's not significant. I think it's 250 feet or so. But it was kind of the point that Carrie was making is when they had to shut that line down. They basically had to go down. I can't remember how deep that wet well is, but it's pretty significant. But they had to find that line and bypass so they could repair, and that's why they're going with dual, just because it'll keep something online if they have to repair the other one. Just redundancy. It's definitely it is an extra cost, but at the linear footage we're looking at, it might not be that much more. So, but yeah, it's your discretion. So
I think at this point, no.
Yeah, we'll just show one.
Any other questions? All right, well, Johnny, thank you very much. Okay, Johnny, I asked this before, where's your office located?
So I work out of the Santa Barbara office, but I actually live in San Diego. I used to work for Penfield and Smith. I lived in Santa Maria for a long time, worked in Santa Barbara, and then, yeah. So I've worked with Carrie for my entire career, pretty much. And she's left, she's come back, but I've been with Stantec pretty much my entire career. So.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we're done with public comment. So with that, I think.
So let me just recap. Yeah. So Johnny, just so we're all on the same page here, you guys have spent some time clarifying based on Director Fairman's questions about some of the various pieces related to lift stations, and you'll make sure you separate costs related to, regardless, City of Solvang solely. I will take some time to reach out to the City of Solvang to see if we can get a little more information in a timely enough fashion for you to add some commentary to the document before you turn it in its final version that we'll discuss at our April full board meeting, not tomorrow night. And I'm just looking back through my comments here just to make sure, I want to make sure everybody gets on the same page. Yeah, the whole, that's the bulk of it. I mean, there were several questions that I think,
and so just to weigh in, Guy, did we want to include anything about pressurized effluent systems? Not that we would be getting into the details too much, but we can add a little snippet about unless we already wrote that in the document.
Yep, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I think that brings us to the end. I have a motion for adjournment at 9:49.
Make a motion to adjourn at 9:49.
Second, all in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you,
Thank you.
Johnny, again.
Yeah, thanks all. Appreciate it. Talk to you later.